listening to the Video Game and Nerd Trivia Podcast with Tony D. Video Game and Nerd Trivia Podcast, your episodic dose of trivia covering all things video games and nerdy. Now, here's your host, Tony D.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Video Game and Nerd Trivia Podcast. Today's a Minisode. So today I'm going to be doing something that I really enjoy. This is going to be about fighting games, but because we're just doing a Minisode where it's just going to be 10 questions, I gotta limit down the fighting games of a certain decade. So for me, I grew up in the 90s and I wanted just to talk about the 90s video games that kind of still hold up today. So I'll be asking you a question, giving you 5 seconds of silence, and then telling you the answer. So let's play round one. There's only one round, but I just have to say that because it's fighting games. Anyway, question one. This sequel was released on the PlayStation, and one of the characters in there is Forrest Law. Previous games actually had his father, Marshall Law. Which game is this? This is Tekken 3. Question 2. This video game is a fighting game in which there's a heavy emphasis on swords and weapons and nunchucks, and you have characters like Yoshimitsu and Mitsurugi. It's technically the second game in the series, but you would be forgiven thinking it's the first game. What game is this? This is Soul Calibur. So this is kind of interesting because the very first Soul game was Soul Edge, and then the second game was Soul Calibur, but then every game after that kind of like added on to the numbering system of Soul Calibur. You got Soul Calibur 1, 2, 3, and so on. But the very first game was actually Soul Edge. Alright, question 3. After the success of the Marvel superheroes fighting game, Capcom decided to team up with Marvel to release this crossover fighting game, the first in the Versus series. Which one is this? This is X-Men vs. Street Fighter. Question 4. This is a sequel fighting game in which there's characters like Kasumi, Ayane, and Ryu Hayabusa. This is Dead or Alive 2. Question 5. In this PlayStation game, there's a possibility of a one-hit kill, and it's developed by Lightweight and published by Square. And basically the way that damage is taken is based on body parts and body damage. Which game is this? I loved playing this game. This was Bushido Blade, and it was like there's so much more tension just knowing that one-hit kills are possible, but they're not like always likely, but it's still possible that it's gonna happen. So it became a game of like, okay, it's a fighting game, but oh shoot, we can actually get hit once and die. It was a really cool idea that wasn't really common in fighting games back then. Question 6. This is the first in a long-running series of Nintendo fighting games in which all the Nintendo mascots and characters would cross over and fight each other. Which game is this? This is Super Smash Brothers. I still remember the commercial to this day. The characters are, just people dressed up in oversized character costumes fighting each other to the song So Happy Together by the Turtles. The memories. Question 7. This fighting game has characters like Dimitri, Felicia, Morrigan, etc. And this was the first game in its series. Which game is this? This is Darkstalkers: The Night Warriors. Question 8. This game was in the arcade and also got a SNES release and had characters like Jago, Fulgor, Cinder, Glacius. Which game was this? This was Killer Instinct. Question 9. This Capcom fighting game had a very famous Evo moment in which the fight was between Ken and Chun-Li, and Chun-Li started her super, and Ken parried every single hit from Chun-Li's super. This was basically the third entry into the third sequel of this fighting game series. Which game is this? This is Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. I had to say third entry of the third sequel, but technically, the Alpha series came out first, but then the Alpha series is not part of the main line, so, the whole Street Fighter release schedule and naming is just confusing. Anyway, last question here. Instead of making the tournament on Earth, where Shang Tsung failed, this tournament was brought into Outworld, and now Shao Kahn is the final boss. Which video game is this? This is, of course, Mortal Kombat 2. Alright, hope you enjoyed that short episode. Lots of fighting games out there. I just had to choose 10, and 10 of those were like my favorites growing up. There's, other ones like Marvel vs. Capcom, 3D ones like Power Stone, all of those out there. But I just had to choose 10. I might do a longer episode in the future where we kind of go deep dive into like types of fighting games, like not the traditional 3D or 2D fighters, but going to like the 3D arena types. But that's another episode for next time. Again, if you like this episode, please rate us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Email me, vigantipodcast@gmail.com, to suggest topic episodes. I'll give you a shout out. But thank you so much again for listening, and until next time, trivia on.